Greg House had it right. Everybody lies. Lies and Deceit is a new series to Netflix, but it originally aired in Spain in 2020 where it was called Liar, which apparently is a remake of a BBC show of the same name. So is this even worth the time to watch? A literature teacher suspects that a well-respected surgeon has drugged her and begins a legal case against him. We've got Laura, who's newly single, and she goes on a date with Javier, who's a widower. When Laura wakes up the next morning, she's shocked to find out she and Javier had sex and believe that he sexually assaulted her. He obviously professes his innocence, and when it comes to light that Laura had falsely accused someone of this exact same thing earlier in her life, the questions arise of who is telling the truth. So this gets a bit dramatic and soapy, but I was honestly hooked almost from the start. Both of the characters come off as believable, which really makes for some great mystery. And when it feels like one should be believed over the other, another question is raised and doubt is again solidified. And at times, both of the characters can be sympathetic, but they can also be problematic, which works in the show's favor. The pace of this moves fairly quickly, and because it's only 6 episodes long and each of them are about that 45-ish minutes, this doesn't take up too much time to get through. And because the drama was so intriguing, it was super easy to continue the binge and watch episode after episode. The show also does a good job of introducing side complications to both people's lives. Laura is one of Javier's son's teachers, and Laura's sister is an anesthesiologist who works alongside Javier. Their worlds being connected in these obscure ways helps to create more tension when the accusations begin. Now, there are a lot of frustrations that the characters create. On both sides, they end up antagonizing a situation, which then can harm either their credibility or their claims. Now, sure, this does make the drama more compelling because we just want to throttle them at times, but sometimes you think it may be easier for their resolution if they just sit still and quit complicating issues. But the flip side of that is that sometimes you need to be your own advocate and get the ball rolling, even at the risk of causing problems. I love how the story continued to find ways to put Laura and Javier in each other's path. Whether it's an issue that Javier's son is having with someone else at school, or even happenstance meetings, each time that this does happen, we can see the fear, anxiety, and anger rise in the characters. Now for me, one thing this story does that I wish it wouldn't have is that there is a reveal well before the story's concluded. Now, I can see why it does it because this enables a whole new set of interactions to happen. But for me, because I was loving the mystery so much and I really liked how I just didn't know who to trust, I wanted that to keep going for as long as possible. Once the reveal is made, and I think it's in episode like 3 or 4, my interest did begin to wane just a bit since the mystery portion was now gone. But this didn't ruin the show, because once the mystery was gone, a frustrating chase of sorts begins. The story still pits the two characters against each other, and the new tension comes from knowing what the reveal is. Now, there are a couple of times where I had to question a character's actions because while I was completely on board with the end goal, it seemed like it would have been counterproductive to what we've been told. Now, I know that's incredibly vague and it doesn't really help anything, but I don't want to spoil it. But I still want to voice a frustration that felt like it just didn't make sense. So just know that towards the end of the show, a character does something that logically should make the information powerless. But the story needs that convenience, so it stays. Again, this didn't ruin the show, but I was just frustrated through a lot of this with how certain people couldn't do something even though it would have been right, and then how others were able to do something that was right, but seemed like it shouldn't work. And the very end was disappointing to me. It's in keeping with characteristics that have been previously established. It just wasn't satisfying. But just because I wanted a different outcome, that doesn't mean the show is bad. Like I've said in other reviews, this illustrates how sucked into the story I became and really did get invested in their outcome. From a technical standpoint, there are some very beautiful shots in this, mostly with the use of aerials. Now, Laura likes to kayak in the ocean, and we get a lot of wonderful scenery of how tiny she becomes in that dark blue water. And these work to show her isolation and her loneliness, even though it's something she enjoys. When there are flashbacks characters experience, whether they're memories or maybe even dreams, the editing makes them frenetic and quick, and then sometimes even jumbled in sequence, which really helps to confuse the facts, which is exactly how the characters are feeling. Now, I loved how these appeared at times to show the truth, but then also work to create doubt as to what really happened. Now, I had mentioned earlier how there are side complications that are introduced to the story. And while these work to make the main characters interact in ways that could be unexpected, some of them also work to distract from the main story. They're still dramatic and even compelling in what's being told because we're following characters that aren't Laura or Javier. Now, even though I appreciated the tension that they could create, it also did kill some of the momentum of getting to the truth of what really happened between Javier and Laura. So overall, Lies and Deceit, or simply Liar, if you're not watching it on Netflix, is a frustrating but effective mystery that creates a lot of suspense and intrigue to determine who is actually telling the truth. I love how I wasn't able to be absolutely certain of the characters until the reveal. And then, despite wishing that that reveal had come later, I became engrossed in the chase of sorts that ensues. The acting is wonderful, with characters we can both sympathize with and despise. Now, I wanted a different final scene, but that's only because I was so invested in it all and wanted a different outcome for a specific character. This was an enjoyable binge, and I'm really curious to see if I can find the BBC version to watch as well. There's no sex or nudity, there is a lot of profanity and some violence, including descriptions of sexual violence. I give Lies and Deceit 4 out of 5 couches. So have you seen this one, or maybe even the original BBC version? I'd love to hear what you thought of it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.